Welcome to another match preview here on Stones TV and the Maidstone United podcast, where we look ahead to our latest return league away game, way out west at the Super-Mare of Weston. So before we look west to this weekend's game, we should look back at the Stones' latest home victory, where we walloped a woeful Wood for the win. Nigel, small measure of revenge for them relegating us almost 2 years ago to the day by the same scoreline.
Yeah, it's always good to get a win against Bournemouth, isn't it? You know, like we said on the preview show, you know, they've been rivals of ours on and off now for like the last 5 or 6 years, and we seem to play crucial games for them. And that's, you know, sadly felt the previous Saturday game felt like a crucial game, and the atmosphere was there, and to put in that performance. And I said it on air, it kind of epitomises all what we're about now, isn't it? You know, that, you know, Leahy and Blair up front, you know, they press high, they you know, they don't let any team sort of settle. You know, the engine room, you know, we've now got that midfield engine room, and I think that was one of the first times this season against a sort of a high quality opposition, they was like dominant.
Yeah,
you know, and that built the base.
Because they've been competitive in most games,
yeah,
as we've said,
absolutely.
In that top 7-8, but that on Saturday was a step up.
Exactly that, and you know, we said it on commentary as well. The first 20 minutes, there was nothing in the game really.
No.
You know, or Alexis just made that really good save that he was blinded by, and just sort of punched it round, dived to the right, and just punched it round the corner, and then we defended that set piece. But you know, I've always said it. You know, to win the war, you've got to win your individual battles, haven't you? And that midfield laid the platform for what was to come. And you know, any time that you get 2 quick goals like that, you know, you're going to put a team, especially a team like Bournemouth, that like to lead from the front. You know, and you know, when they get a goal, that they close up, and you know, they try all the sort of histrionics. And yeah, we saw a little bit of that, didn't we? With a
little bit beforehand
with the Josh Hare incident there. You know, big up to Josh Hare as well. I mean, you know, he's unlucky playing against Stones this season. He went off similar time of the game in the first half, and then he's done the same again on Saturday. But yeah, it did actually change the game. I think once he went off, you know,
that whole 5-minute period with Ashmore as well, before, during, and after.
I mean, and I said it on commentary. You know, you could see the players were sort of like, they knew what was going on, and all teams kind of do it if they're in that situation, don't they? But it seemed to have a bigger effect on the Bournemouth players than what it did on the Maidstone players. I think they kind of, you know, it could have gone one or two ways. They could have got sort of a bit sort of like wound up by it and sort of left a tackle in, got on a yellow card. But they didn't. They kept their discipline. They kept their shape, and you know, you could physically see it even on the touchline. You know, Luke Garrard was the one that was getting, you know, wound up by the situation because things wasn't going his way, and you know, he you know, and we've said it before. You know, this is, you know, I'm not putting anything out there that nobody knows, but he's under pressure delivery. He's been brought back in to get them promoted, and it's not going to plan as what they thought. You know, they've had some big money transfers come in, and you know, they're the ones that currently, as the table stands, are looking over their shoulders, thinking whether they're going to make those playoffs. So. Yeah, you know, the pressure was definitely on them, and like I say, getting those 2 early goals, it just sort of, it was sort of like, it was a weird sort of feeling in the ground, wasn't it? Because it was sort of like a disbelief that, you know, we're doing it against a team that, you know, everybody sort of respects, you know, and really wanting to win because of what's gone on this season, and two, it was sort of like, we were playing so well. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like that excitement and disbelief all measured in. And it's, you know, then you've got the old towards the end there when we was 4-0 up, the ole every time. You know,
it's been a minute since one of those.
Yeah, exactly. And it, you know, it was just one of those sort of performances that, you know, makes everybody feel proud again. You know, really, you know, from the owners down to the players, and you know, it's, you know, it brings everybody together, isn't it? And hopefully that will continue throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So to that table that Nigel just mentioned, and the other results in the top 8 of said table on Saturday. Torquay travelled to Aveley and ran out late 1-0 winners. Truro journeyed to Chelmsford and were held to a goalless draw by the hosts' 10 men. Sounds familiar. Dorking hosted Eastbourne Borough, and despite being down to 10 men for most of the match themselves, the home side won 3-1 in that fixture. Weston-super-Mare prepared for hosting the Stones with a trip to Hornchurch, where they run out 4-2 winners in a thoroughly entertaining game. Luke Coulson scoring the final goal of that game to complete his hat-trick from within his own defensive box. Well worth a watch, that one, if you've not seen it already. Leaders Worthing hosted Hampton and Richmond. They won 2-0 with 2 second-half goals. So the table headed into the final 5 match days in April is as follows. Weston-super-Mare in 8th on 69 points. Boreham Wood dropped to 7th on 71 points. The Stones moved up into 6th on 73 points, keeping that 4-point playoff buffer intact. Eastbourne Borough dropped 2 to 5th and remain on 75 points. Torquay went up a place into 4th on 77 points. Truro slipped a place to 3rd, now on 77 points, above the goals by virtue of goal difference. Dorking leapt 2 spots to 2nd with their win, a 3rd side on 77 points and their goal difference the joint best in the division with the Stones, meaning top of the tree still, and extending their lead to 3 points again is Worthing on 80 points. So Nigel, hashtag never dull in South, hashtag squeaky bum time.
You just got to look after yourself, haven't you?
Yeah.
You have, you can look at, this coming weekend we've got Worthing playing Truro, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
So again, every week there's sort of like a crunch game in there, and but Saturday's result, as I said, will just give the team that little bit of confidence and give us that sort of belief that what we're doing is the right way, and you can see it in all the social media posts that the team put out. They're very much together, and it's all sort of like they still believe, and why wouldn't you? You're only what is it, 5 points off the top? 7 points off the top, isn't it? But 4 points, and with our goal difference, you're suddenly up into that second, third places, which is what you want to achieve if you can't win the title, isn't it? So we've just got to, as I said before, we've just got to keep winning our games and just seeing where it takes us.
Yeah.
And as George always says, hashtag believe.
Believe. So we said we focus on ourselves, but we'll have a quick look at the top 8's remaining head-to-head fixtures throughout the month of April. So on the 5th, Nigel's already mentioned there, Truro travelling to Worthing. The Easter weekend is always referred to as moving time, and there are plenty of head-to-heads to help affirm that. On Good Friday, Worthing travel to Eastbourne, and Torquay travel to Truro. Then on Easter Monday, Weston-super-Mare host Truro City, and Worthing's final home game sees them hosting a blockbuster against Dorking. Final day fixtures for the 8 sides in the top 8 then. Dorking are at home to Chesham, Eastbourne host Hampton and Richmond, Worthing travel to Enfield, the Stones are at Farnborough, Torquay go to Hemel, and Tunbridge Angels host Boreham Wood, and Truro are at home at St Albans. As you said before, Nigel, still going to the final day, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, even if the title isn't done and dusted by then, which I can't see, there'd be so many jockeying for positions in that 2 to sort of 7 position for home advantage, and it's going down to the wire, isn't it?
So some transfer news from Stones then. Arj Krasnicki was allowed to join Dulwich Hamlet for the remainder of the season on deadline day. That was in part due to the fact that Jacob Berkeley-Ajapong was returning to the Gallagher. He was part of the Stones FA Cup run last year until his season ended in March before the playoffs. One of a number of last season's hits who have returned at one point or another, as well as Jacob Farrell-Willis came in on loan from Middlesbrough. He was most recently on loan at Queen of the South. Got to be happy to get Farrell on board. I bet that's the first time he's heard that from anyone. Clearly I don't know what I'm talking about. Willis. Nigel?
Yeah, 2 good signings. I think it's probably an area that we needed to get bodies in, in that midfield sort of stroke attacking midfield role. Jacob is somebody that George obviously trusts, from his time here last year. He brought him in mid-season last year, and he didn't let the team down, did he? He's unfortunate to get that injury at Dartford that sort of ended his season early, but he's that experienced head that we need in there. And then you've got Farrell-Willis coming in again. It's good that he's coming in from a northern club, although he's he's Middlesbrough up there in the north east.
Yes.
It's north east, yes, as you know.
I would.
It's he's got roots down in London, so yeah, it probably makes sense. You know, he can come in, get a little bit of experience, and hopefully, you know, do a job for us in the playoffs. You know, and who's to say, you know, he couldn't be this year's Joel Powell or Didi or, you know, all those players that, you know, live in the memory of successful playoff and championship winning sides of the past.
There's another script waiting to be written there, isn't there? So the comings and goings at the Optimus Stadium since last we met in August. Deep breath, strap in. Dylan Morgan, he had a 1 month loan spell from Yeovil Town starting at the end of August until he was recalled after 3 goals in 5 games for the Seagulls. Max Harris joined on loan for a 4th consecutive season in between the sticks in early September. That meant Will Buse went back to Yeovil via other loan moves that we've seen him play at in the division this season. Left back Billy Kirkman joined on loan from Swindon Town before he was recalled in December by his parent club. Marley Rose joined at the end of September on loan from Bristol City. Forward Sam Pearson signed on after leaving Yeovil Town. He was signed up until the end of next season. Club captain and defender Emlyn Lewis signed a new long-term deal at the start of November. In December, defender Raphael Arroy returned to the club on loan from Bristol City. Forward Harvey Greenslade joined on loan from Yeovil just before Christmas. Keeper Kelland Absalom went off to the Welsh Premier League in the new year. 4 players departed as 2025 began. Brandon Back, Marley Rose, Raphael Arroy and Harvey Greenslade all returned to their parent clubs following the expiration of their loans. Defender Josh Sebury joined on loan from Newport County until the end of this season. Striker Ollie Bray joined on loan from Aldershot Town. Midfielder Pedro Borges signed on loan from Exeter City. The Seagulls then signed Brandon back again and immediately loaned him out to Taunton Town and then to Willen Rovers, as you do. Very busy doing the hokey cokey down there. Forward Nick McCooty, my favourite footballer name, as I've mentioned on air before. He departed the Optima at the end of January due to a change in his personal circumstances. Midfielder Jake Hicks signed from Larkhall Athletic at the end of February, but was immediately loaned back to Larkhall for the remainder of the season. Will Dawes signed from Chippenham in early March, partially after he impressed at the Optima on New Year's Day with 2 goals. Well, you know what they say, if you can't beat them, even, sign them. Ollie Bray was recalled by Aldershot in mid-March, and in the last of their transfer dealings this season, striker Louis Britton joined from Bristol Manor Farm. So Nigel, an extensive south-western list of toing and froing that seems to have kept them on the cusp of things in the playoff race.
Yeah, there's been a lot of coming and goings, hasn't there, down at Weston-super-Mare, as you say. What was it, October time they were leading the league, or September, October, weren't they? They was out there for quite a while. They had that little bit of a slip, but they've kind of got a little bit of a new bounce again, and they've got their sort of swagger back again. And I think one of the names that stands out for me there is Sam Pearson. I think he's come in and again had that little bit of experience there. Yeah, he's just sort of fitted into that team, and there's a lot of doing and throwing between Yeovil, isn't there, and their players, and they've obviously got a good relationship with those, but it hasn't done them too bad. Like you say, now they can have a settled period now where you can't make any more transfers, so they're going to hope for their sakes that it's going to be enough to see them into the post-season playoffs. Yeah.
So the key man for the Seagulls, goalkeeper Max Harris, has been the number 1 since mid-September. He has 10 clean sheets in that time. Emlyn Lewis is the leading appearance maker in the Western back line. He has scored in 3 games this season. Each time his side have scored 3, only winning 2 of those. Mind, the loss was that mad opening day game at home to Worthing. They lost 4-3. Midfielder Luke Coulson has 20 goals and 20 assists in all competitions so far this season for the Seagulls. His latest goals came via that hat-trick last time out away at Hornchurch. And he has more goals than their top 2 scoring forwards combined, Sam Pearson and Ruben Reid. They are both on a respectable 9 each so far this season in the league. So Nigel, it's a very talented spine in this side, and 3 of them each looking to reach milestone goals tallies on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Ruben Reid is one of those players that's been around sort of West Country teams. I know he's sort of like Exeter and places like that. He's got a host of clubs in the EFL, and he's got all that experience. I think he scored in the corresponding fixture last year, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
I think by Manchester opened the scoring early doors, and we was actually talking about it, wasn't we? With George Fowler, giving away that. It's similar to the penalty that we got against Boreham Wood when.
Hence why we brought it up in conversation.
Yeah, when Temi was sort of wrestled to the ground. I think George did similar for their penalty last year, didn't he? So he had that little bit of experience, and then Sam Pearson, as we said there, he's coming on loan mid-season, and to get 9 goals, and add that sort of more goals to game, and then you've got Luke Coulson. He's another one of those players that through his time at Bromley and Ebbsfleet, we've come up against him many times over the years, isn't he? And I think he's one of those players that a lot of the Stones fan base would love to have seen gracing the Gallagher Stadium here, but it never happened for one reason or another, and he's sort of gone back down to the West Country where he's got roots, and it's like we've said about our players. If you're playing in an environment you're comfortable in, and you haven't got that commute, and you're playing around your friends and family, it sort of does settle you down, and that's showing. He's had probably his best season goal wise. He's always been a critical sort of crucial player, isn't he? That partnership he had with Michael Cheek at Bromley and Ebbsfleet, and that he's always sort of been a threat in opposition boxes, but he's getting those goals now, and he's definitely a player that Maidstone will have to be watching this coming weekend.
Definitely. Well, since we last met on the August Bank Holiday Monday, Weston, like the Stones, reached the first round of the FA Cup before they lost in a cracking derby game at Bristol Rovers by 3-1 in front of a near 7,000 crowd. The FA Trophy saw them crash out at the first hurdle, again, like the Stones, and they lost 3-2 at home to Weymouth. So their league form, 36 games played since last we met, 18 games on the road, producing 11 wins with 4 defeats at Torquay, Worthing, Tunbridge and Farnborough. They've also, of course, played 18 home games in that time, but only 5 wins in that sequence. That included a run of 3 months without a home win between November and February. That included defeats to Eastbourne, Chippenham, Welling and Salisbury. But despite that poor form, they've remained close to the playoff picture nearly the whole season through, in the top 10 since match day 4, and they've remained in 8th place for the last 18 consecutive match days now, Nigel. So fairly consistent.
Yeah, they're very consistent towards the top of that table there, haven't they? And we said they had that little mini slump around October, November time, but it's that away form. I think they've got the best away record in the league, but obviously we're going there, they beat the Stones here, and I think that's probably the longest gap between games, isn't it? Hence why there's those long lists of form and players that are ins and out. Since we played them back here on Bank Holiday Monday, which it's so difficult at that. So you're still in August at that time, aren't you?
Yeah.
And we lost to Truro the week before that, or closer to that sort of game, and
the Chippenham away game around there as well,
and you don't sort of realise at the time what crucial games they can be, but they've carried that early season momentum, as we said, especially away from home, and that they've sort of kept up in them around about them promotion places and playoff places throughout the season. So they're there on merit, and quite rightly it's going to be a tough game, and both teams will be going into it off the back of a good result last week, and both teams will sort of be keen to sort of inflict some sort of morale victory and get the 3 points.
So if you can't remember all of the players from the previous meeting, then why not head back to our previous preview video and podcast from this season for more information on Saturday's opponents. The links to the video and podcast are both in the description below. And if you can't make it to the game on Saturday, be sure to tune in to Chris and Darren from 2:40 on Stones Live. You'll see them on the hot take and then hear them on the highlights once they go online. So last time against these opponents, the Stones very much had a mare. And with it being Grand National weekend, Weston have been a mare's length short of the Stones for a lot of this run. In this match promises to go some way to determining the destinies of the runners and riders come the end of this month. It could even be a photo finish. Be short odds on that, no doubt. Our thanks to you all out there, as ever, for watching or listening to the latest preview. Like and subscribe on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast, just search for the Maidstone United podcast. If you haven't already watched or listened to it, there is an owner's Q&A edition of this very podcast for your delectation. Might help with that long journey on Saturday, perhaps. A fascinating listen as ever. See or hear you for our next preview ahead of the return league home game against relegation threatened Weymouth. And as always,
Come on, you Stones!